Welcome to UnCeiling You, the podcast that empowers ambitious women to take radical responsibility and break through barriers. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, your host. Before we dive in, take a moment to download this episode so you can listen anytime, anywhere. If you love what you hear, please share it with your friends or social media network. Your support helps us grow. For those of you ready to take your ambition even further, consider joining our membership community. Imagine what you could achieve with the right tools and network. Our membership unlocks early episodes, practical workshops, and direct connections with inspiring leaders. Head to the show notes to join, download, or share. Now, let's get started with unsealing your potential and watch the ripple effect unfold. Change is hard, right? But what if transitioning to a new community or environment could actually rebalance your purpose? That's what Mariette, a Fortune 200 sales executive and host of Mariette's On the Move podcast, is here to talk about on this episode of the UnCeiling You podcast. Lovingly known as the Martha Stewart of moving, Mariette has made 19 moves in 24 years. From coast to coast, she's seen it all. But it's not just about physical moves. It's about realigning your life based on your values and finding your footing in new environments. She's sharing how her Fred framework can guide you through transitions and help you thrive no matter where life takes you. Now let's get started with this UnCeiling You podcast.
Okay. Mariette, I'm so excited to be here with you. We've been together in an empowerment group for quite a while, and we've wanted to set this up. And so now here we are.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me, Nat.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. So let's get started with your concept of crossing the corporate monkey bars. It's a totally intriguing concept. And so my question for you is, how can someone use imagination and ambition to figure out which ladder they want to climb, especially if they're feeling stuck or unsure of their next moves?
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. What I often coach around is to really take note of what your strengths are, right? So you could be in a sales job, but really enjoy putting events together, or really find yourself leaning in when somebody's talking about recruiting or connecting people in the right positions. And I think that being consciously aware of what you enjoy plus what your strengths are will help you kind of take a step back and figure out where you need to make your next linear move. And I think part of that is, we oftentimes get in a position and think that like the best path is up, when really the best path might be across. So for instance, I started in an inside sales role in my company, and then I ended up moving into a recruiting role where I was still selling the company, but I was able, based on what I knew about the role itself, to look at it from, kind of a self-awareness perspective and say, okay, all the things that I don't like to do in this role, I'm hearing from this candidate that they don't like that, but they'll put up with it. And I know from personal perspective that it's hard to put up with it for very long, right? Being able to coach and guide that person to say, this isn't the right role for you. And then moving into an outside sales role for as long as I did, I ended up thriving because I knew exactly what I liked and what I didn't like in the role. So I could take the ball and run with it, but I didn't love grabbing the ball to begin with, right? So as I moved across the organization into different roles, being more and more aware of what I was good at and what I enjoyed, because they're two different things sometimes, right? Like you could really be good at something and just not like it.
Exactly.
Right. But then being able to climb that ladder where I am now a field sales manager for this company after having been in the role for, 12 years. And now I can take my experience from being in the inside sales role and understanding and being empathetic to what they do in the day-to-day, and also connecting with the customers from an outside perspective and saying, okay, internally, I know you want this and this person internally is going to do this. Let me set up that conversation, which is what I did in recruiting. And then I took that off to the streets because I like to be in front of people and hear them and feel them and see what they're doing. And then that was the ladder that I decided to climb. So I think in retrospective, taking all of the different parts of what you loved about your experiences kind of lends to that ambition. And then when you get on that right ladder, climbing seems effortless, right? When you're not on the right ladder, sometimes it feels like you're hanging, on the ladder with like 20-pound weights on your ankles, trying to climb, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, what I like about what you're saying is, it's important to try new things, to really explore different things, because sometimes you may never even know what your strengths are unless you give it a shot.
right. Or even asking somebody, right? Some of your leaders or some of your peers, like, hey, we've been working together for several years. What do you think I'm good at? Like, if you had today, to put me into a new role tomorrow, what would you put me in? Right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes you can't see for yourself, but other people can see for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like looking at your nose without a mirror. You can't see it. You've had a lot of change.
I have.
Yeah, so you've navigated new environments. You've moved 19 times in 24 years.
I have.
That had to be challenging and inspiring and eye-opening. How have you made that transition? How did you actually go about making those transitions and rebalancing or learning your purpose as you did this?
That's a great question. I think people move and transition into new roles for different reasons. And I think, again, going back to self-awareness and really spending time thinking about, what you like and what you don't like. I lived in North Carolina. I was in Charlotte, and this very last move was probably the best move for me, but also the most tumultuous move that I've ever had. I had things come into my path. And again, like you said, 19 times in 24 years, like I've kind of seen it all. I've had my stuff held hostage. I've, gone to move into an apartment and it got pulled out from under me. Like there has been things that I have been through that you sometimes can't anticipate. I would say I've always had a plan B. And you never want to have to use the plan B, but plan B is always good to have if you haven't thought it through. But like I was saying, for the Charlotte move, there were things that I could not have anticipated. We had hurricane at the time of this recording. We're about a month after Hurricane Helene that hit Asheville, North Carolina, very hard. And my county, which is 2 hours away from where Asheville was put in the Helene impact zone by FEMA, and they canceled the closing on my home, which I could have never anticipated. Having a conversation with my attorney, he was like, oh, that's probably a scam. Just ignore it, because he hadn't even heard of that ever. And he's a real estate attorney. So to answer your question, the move from Charlotte to Carmel, Indiana, which is where I am today, really was prompted by the framework that I put together, because it's called FRED and it goes over finances, robustness, so think mental and physical strength, ecosystem, and dreams. And my dream has really been to lean into my podcast, to coach young adults to go from being college students to corporate pros, right? And really bridging that gap, but also helping anybody across the country. There's 11 million people that move across the country every single year. And the stories that I hear from the scams to the fresh starts, are both inspiring and daunting. So for me, when I look at the grander picture and what helps me rebalance is I do this values-based exercise. And I go, and as I get older and older, I'll be 48 in December, and I didn't realize early on how incredibly important the community was, because when you're younger, you just kind of walk up to the bars and you meet people and then you're friends forever. And and that's very easy. But when you work remotely now from home and you don't have a corporate environment where you can just kind of meet people and, go out and do things, it's a little harder to make friends. So what I did to rebalance here is I made a plan, because I know community is so important. And part of the reason I moved to Carmel specifically was because it's halfway between my friends and family in Chicago and my friends and family down in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I have a couple college friends here in Carmel. So I have many different communities to draw from, but I wanted to make it a point to get involved early. So I, found a church right away that I am really excited about, and I'm joining their Rooted program. So I'm going to meet, men and women come January, who are like-minded. And then you and I talk about tennis a lot because I know you play tennis, and I played tennis growing up, but I haven't played tennis in many, many years. Met a friend of a friend who had just moved from Carmel to Ponte Vedra, Florida. And she's like, oh my gosh, you have to go to the Carmel Racquetball Club. They have an amazing tennis clinic, especially for people who are trying to get back into it and beginners. And you can meet friends. They do all kinds of events. So I joined, and tomorrow I have my first court time, and I start my actual clinic. I know, the week after Thanksgiving. So I'm building a community. I'm going to Toastmasters next Tuesday. I'm doing all of these things to get myself integrated into the community, and I'm renting. Originally, I wanted to buy, but then, when the house kind of fell out, I had to walk away from this house. I was like, okay, renting does really make sense, because what if I don't like it? Then I can actually pick Knoxville or Chicago and move to one of those without, having to sell a house and going through all of that. So rebalancing really comes from figuring out what your values are, what you enjoy, and what brings you joy, and really leaning in on those principles.
And so one of the other podcasts that we recorded talks about values, and that even applies to Robin, who is also a tennis player.
Oh, nice.
Talked about how she left a company because the values of the company did not align with her values.
That's huge.
It is. And she talked about fear. And I know that you talk about fear or overcoming fear of change. You often speak about how change is hard. What role does imagination and ambition play in helping people push through the fear of the unknown? And what advice do you have for those who resist change, even if they know it could lead to growth? And maybe you could tell a story of how you did that.
Yeah. So I often liken it to kind of a roller coaster. Like, we see these commercials of theme parks and amusement parks where people are going on the roller coaster and they're, smiling and their hands are up in the air. And sometimes it's like that terrifying, the memes that you see on Instagram where people are dropping, and it's terrifying and they're screaming. And you don't know which is which, right? But I think naturally as a human, biologically, we always lean towards, this is going to be terrifying. This is going to be so hard. This is going to be the worst. And I want to reframe it for people, because what if it's not, right? What if it's amazing? What if you go into it with this perspective of like, I can control what I can control, and my attitude is going to be everything. And yes, there might be things that I can't control and I might not like, but what if it is awesome? What if I can find the beauty in every single moment rather than finding the terror? What if I, in taking that perspective and shifting it to, as soon as you have that negative thought, saying, nope, thank you for, subconscious, thank you for, putting that, reminding me of that fear. I'm going to take a different path, and I'm going to find the beauty in whatever this was, instead of taking your advice and, protecting me. Because the subconscious, that's its job, is to protect you. But we don't have tigers chasing after us, right? So, in the past, like, that was the fear of this, there could be danger lurking around the other corner. But when you do a lot to prepare and plan for it, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be as bad as you think. So going back to my situation of moving here, one of the funny things that happened is I got into this apartment. I went from a 3-bedroom house with a garage to a 2-bedroom apartment with no garage. And I got a couple storage units. And I really was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I thought I was having like a nervous breakdown. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I can just get all the clutter out. I hate clutter. Like, okay, take a second. This is a great apartment. There's a coffee shop in the bottom floor. There's a bakery in the bottom floor. I'm literally a half a mile walk from the downtown area. I'm 6-minute ride to everything else within this great little area. I had to flip my own switch. I had to reframe what I was doing and say, okay, well, I have a storage unit that's 20 minutes away. I could, for the first time ever, not have all this clutter hanging over me, and I can put it away and lock it up and get rid of it. And I think that just physically getting rid of that clutter, and also mentally decluttering what was negative and what was holding over me, it was almost like my sense of entitlement that was getting me so angry kind of dissipated, and I was able to be grateful for the fact that I'm in a beautiful apartment in a beautiful town, without clutter, and I'm free to do whatever I want, right? Because I have the core competencies, shelter and security.
There you go. As well, you mentioned your framework, so that was great. Can you tell me, just maybe go a little bit deeper into your framework in Fred and how it really, you emphasize reverse engineering?
Quick break, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode, remember to download it for offline listening and share it with your friends or network. Sharing helps us reach more ambitious listeners like you. Want to take your growth to the next level? Join our membership program for just a few dollars a month and gain exclusive benefits designed to support you, early access to episodes, bonus content, and even a say in future topics. Don't just listen, be part of the journey. If you're a woman aiming for management, but stuck in the experience trap, listen up. You're talented, ambitious, but hitting a wall. You need experience to get a management role. But how do you get that experience? Introducing UnCeiling Your Career, the book that's breaking the experience trap. Discover how to showcase your leadership potential, even without prior management experience. Transform your project skills into leadership assets and build a strategic career path. Ready to climb the ladder? Grab the book, UnCeiling Your Career, today, at any place you prefer to purchase books, and start your journey to the top.
Yeah, and this has come from many, 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 many moves, right? And it doesn't just have to apply to moving. I have found that any situation that I'm in, if I can really kind of take it and kind of walk through, it really does help. So I start with the dreams, but the dream can also be a goal, right? So you can interchange dream. Fred just happened to be a good acronym for it, but dream could also mean goal. And what I do is I reverse and just so I get really, really niched down on what that goal is. Very specific, very like today, not necessarily 5 years from now, because that dream can change and evolve, which is what you would hope it would do. But what do I need today to hit to this goal within the next 6 to 12 months? And so I start there. And then when I reverse engineer it, I go to the finances and I say, okay, well, what do I need financially to make this happen? To not only have, my core bills paid, my utilities, all of that stuff, but also what I need to invest into this goal. What do I need to invest time-wise, and how much is that costing me? And then I go into robustness. So again, mental and physical strength. Do I physically need to do anything for this goal? Mentally, am I strong enough to go after it, right? Because there are some things that you have to do to really take charge of your fears, to take charge of going and putting yourself out there. I mean, there's a difference between self-confidence and self-worth. Somebody can be very, very, very self-confident, but subconsciously not feel they're worthy of getting this goal. And until you work through and get both aligned mentally, if you are not robust enough to push yourself through when it feels hard, when you feel embarrassed, when you feel like you're not good enough, it's going to be really hard to get to that next level, which is your ecosystem. So that means putting yourself in a community of people that not only lift you up, but help you see that path forward. So like you and I are in the empowerment group and we meet every Sunday morning. And there are often times that, if I say something, you'll chime in with one, bit of advice. Kara will jump in with another bit of advice. Trisha might, talk about her perspective and what she's done in the past to get me past. And now I have 3 people who are not only lifting me up, but believe in me enough that can help me push through. And then I go back to that goal or dream with all of that information and make sure it's still the dream, right? Yeah. Maybe because of what I've done from a research perspective to get me to that point, I'm like, oh, you know what? I think I can level that up a bit. You know what would make it even better is this. You take that framework. It's a good basis to start with. And then if all of those things align, you have no data to prove that it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to go after it.
So, and then when you coach people, tell me how you support people through that framework.
Yeah. Well, so I'll give you an example. One of my my friends is she just recently went to a new role, and she was really financially, it was a great move for her, right? So like in her heart, she's a single mom. She's out of Colorado, and she really wanted to kind of level up. She had been with the same company for several years. She had gotten to the kind of the top of her game, right? So she's won President's Club several times, and she was feeling very uneasy about the direction of the company, and they weren't really giving her any information either. So when another opportunity came up, she went through all the things like, what if it doesn't work out? What if it, all of those
Mhm.
fears. And we walked through like, well, what if it does? Okay, let's talk about the money. Is it better or worse? Can you live on the base? Can you, how do you make more money? How do you grow as far as, is it merit increases? Is it commissions? What does that look like? And then we went to a mental perspective. Okay, you have a 4-year-old, right? Physically, can you do the travel, right? Because you got to have somebody to watch your daughter. Can you be out in the field with your reports and all of the physical side? But then mentally, you're going to have to learn an entirely new business. It's in the same industry, but it is completely different. Are you there mentally to be able to focus and absorb and all that stuff? And then who in your community is going to lift you up? And in this particular case, she had some friends from past positions that were in it that she was able to go and ride along with and build her up. So she comes to me one day and she just said, I don't know why, but I'm so anxious. I'm so scared. All these people are, talking me up, and I'm just feeling all of this pressure that I am not going to be good enough for this role. And I said, well, if all of these people are talking you up, then there is no data to support that you're going to fail. And she just was like, we're both Christians. And so I said, that's probably Satan talking and not God, because God lifts you up and Satan tears you down. Right. So maybe that's a different voice you need to listen to as well. And I didn't know this, but she was actually at that point, she had just landed in Orlando for training, and she was going to be with a bunch of these people. And she's like, I needed that so bad, because you're right. Like, all of the things worked. And that was that one voice saying that I couldn't do it, and building the pressure and building the anxiety. But what if it does work? And what if I'm more successful than I was in the past? And you forget that, because naturally we are subconsciously wired to protect ourselves, and keeping us small and safe is protection.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Another podcast that I'm recording next week is to talk about the inner critic. And I actually named my inner critic, and I'll reveal the name in that podcast, but it is funny because she shows up sometimes on the tennis court, and my tennis friends know about her, and they're like, is that person haunting you right now? I'm like, yes, she is visiting. We have
Mine's
to get rid
Bertha.
of.
Mine is Bertha. I don't know. When somebody brought this concept to me, I was like, Big Bertha strikes again. Like, I don't know. I don't even know a Bertha.
I know. And if there's a Bertha listening, it's not you. It's a different person.
It's not you. It is not you. The person I have in my head, looks like Ursula from Little Mermaid.
Yeah. Before we go to the bonus question, what I'd like you to do is tell people, if you're, wondering about making a move, wondering about moving. And when I say making a move, it can not only be a physical move, a move from one location to another, but it can also be a move from one company to another, or it could be a move from one boss to another, or one corporate environment to another. And say they love you, how would they get a hold of you?
I have a website called mariette'sonthemove.com, and I am very active on Instagram. I'm active on LinkedIn. But I think a good rule of thumb is to really lean into how you're feeling about what you want to do. And if it's bringing fear to you, that's probably the direction you should be going, because we only get scared when we know we're going to level up. We don't get scared when we're descending, right? So I think that that's always a good move. And I went through that myself recently. Like, when I moved to Indiana, I was moving out of market, and my boss told me that I was going to have to look for a new role. And as scary as that was, and I love my boss. He's great. He's always supported me. But I get where he's coming from, but it also gave me the opportunity to potentially explore new roles. So as scary as it was, I was like, you know what? That's probably the direction I should lean in, because it is scary and it does sound, hard. But I knew I was up for the challenge, and I knew moving was the right thing for me to do. I have talked many people through that, and I'm happy to help. You can DM me, you can call me, reach out to me on the website. I'm kind of all over.
That sounds fantastic. From As far as the bonus question is concerned, what I'd like you to do is think back to your first move, the very first move. You've now since had 19 moves. What advice would you give your younger person that maybe someone who's moving for the first time may need?
Imagine moving for the very first time. The excitement, the challenges, and the opportunities that come with starting fresh. In the Unsealing Zone, we're diving into Mariette's incredible advice on navigating that transition. Her wisdom is practical, empowering, and a must-hear for anyone looking to embrace change with confidence. Together, we're creating a community where ambition and imagination thrive. Join the Unsealing Zone today, and let's build a shared vision of what's possible. And here's a challenge. Let's hit 10,000 listens for this episode and inspire even more people. Are you in?
What's holding women back from leadership? The answer might be in the broken rung. For every 100 men promoted to manager, only 72 women are promoted. The broken rung, an invisible barrier keeping talented women from advancing to that first managerial role, widening the gender gap at the top. It's a harsh reality, driven by bias in promotion processes. But there's a way forward. Introducing UnCeiling Your Career, a powerful new book that's a blueprint for breaking through. This isn't just another career guide. It shows you how to leverage your strengths, choose strategic projects, and build the skills you need to reach new heights. In UnCeiling Your Career, you'll discover practical tools to conquer self-doubt, design a clear path forward, and network with people who uplift you. Ready to reach your unique destiny and redefine success? UnCeiling Your Career. Available now wherever you like to purchase books. Don't wait for permission to rise. Grab your copy today and start breaking through.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Unsealing You. If today's conversation inspired you, make sure to download this episode so you can revisit it anytime and subscribe to the show so you never miss a new episode. For those of you ready to take your ambition to the next level, I invite you to consider joining our membership community where you'll get exclusive bonus content, early access to episodes, and much more. Until next time, remember, it's time to take radical responsibility for your life and unseal your potential to watch the positive ripple effect unfold.